gotta go on. I think. Do I have to hit the PA?
Yeah, you're all set.
I'm all set. Oh, did I just turn it off?
Everything's on.
Everything's on? Hi, everybody. We're having...
Recording in progress.
We are... Oh, look, here comes Brian. Okay, I'm gonna call the Economic Development Subcommittee meeting for 5:45 to order for March 13th, 2024. A note to residents, all citizens are welcome to attend public meetings in person. To view the live meeting remotely, citizens are encouraged to watch in live stream on Franklin Town Hall TV, YouTube channel, or the live broadcast on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29. Meetings are also archived by the Franklin TV on Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel and shown on repeat on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29 for those who missed the live meeting. To participate in the meeting remotely, citizens are able to join the Zoom webinar using the information provided on the agenda on the town website. And let's see, Zoom webinar ID number is 875-2805-0083. That's 875-8205-0083. I guess there's no call-in anymore, but you need to enter your full name and email address when you are joining the webinar. So thank you for that. Actually, Kobe got off online. That's, I think, we're gonna move seats. Everybody can just stay in their seats. It's okay. It's like we could just stay here. So tonight we're going to talk about the MBTA Communities Compliance Update with Brian Taberner, and I think Jamie, what? Jamie's going to come back. It can.
The wrong name.
Oh, the names are mixed up, but you got. It's okay. I think it's okay if the names are mixed up. Like who? I don't know. But you could tell I'm a little tired today, so it's all good. Are we gonna wait for Jamie to come back, or we're just gonna go? We're just gonna go, right? Because Brian knows everything, and so Brian, take it away.
Wow.
Thank you.
Somebody's got to know everything, right?
Somebody has to
I
know.
don't know everything, but I'll tell you what I do know.
Okay.
So I'm just going to give you an update on the so-called MBTA multifamily zoning requirements.
Okay.
So back in January 2021, the state adopted the Economic Development Bond Bill at the time, which changed the state's zoning act. And at that time, the housing choices section of the bill included a so-called Section 3A. And that required each community in the MBTA district to zone for multifamily housing by right.
Right.
So, what that meant for the town of Franklin is we needed to create a zoning district of reasonable size, as is stated in the act, in which multifamily housing is permitted by right. It does not have any age restrictions, and it has to be suitable for families. Has to be a minimum gross density of 15 units per acre, and it needs to be located, most of it, 75% of it, should be located within a half a mile of our commuter rail stations.
Right.
We need to create a district that is at least would allow by right 1,883 housing units. And that doesn't mean it has to be all the same zoning district, what we look at, but the so-called MBTA district has to be that much, and it could be multiple zoning districts. So we contracted with MAPC for a little while back last year. They came up with an assessment. I didn't like what it said. And I think there were a couple of issues that we knew that could make it a better look better, so we did a couple of zoning changes recently, over
Right.
the last year, including changing the impervious coverage in residential 5, and also allowed multifamily by right up to 2,250 square feet per unit in C1 and general residential 5. So last October, we talked with MAPC again. They gave us some other numbers, and it really was not, in my opinion, and it's not their fault, but there was not as close as I really thought we would be at that point. And what the situation is, the state put together a spreadsheet, their compliance model, if you will.
Okay,
And in that compliance model are a lot of assumptions. It assumes that, okay, if you don't mention that you require a certain amount of open space or whatever, they throw in, okay, 20% of open space or whatever. So they have all these assumptions, and it doesn't look at, it's not like they take a real good look at our zoning bylaw and say, okay, you can put in that zone, in that area of town, X amount of housing units. They
Okay.
make all these assumptions about our zoning, and many of the assumptions are really not accurate.
wrong.
Right. They're wrong. So what I did recently, just to let you know, is I took the general residential 5, and I went over it parcel by parcel and eliminated certain parcels that we know we're not gonna put multifamily on ever, town-owned conservation land,
Right,
and things of
yep.
that nature. Also limited some that were outside of their half-mile area, or where they weren't connected, they were too small and were farther outside, so the state's not accepting those certain, even though we could get maybe 30 more housing units on it, they're not gonna count those, so I know that. So I just came down with a certain amount, and according to my numbers, and I didn't exaggerate anything, we have over 1,343 units we could get in general residential 5, according to our zoning, just by running simple numbers, calculating it out. And the model that was put together, MAPC came up with 950 or 947 units in that same district. So that's a big difference,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Today, I did a quick run through on the commercial 1, how many we could get in there.
Okay,
And I came up with 543. So between the two districts, I came up with 1,906 units. And we need to get 1,883. So we actually can do it.
right.
But if you run the compliance model with all of their assumptions, it doesn't
doesn't
come
work.
close.
Can I ask you a question about the commercial one? Is that that's by right as well?
That is by right,
Oh, yeah,
yes.
okay. I
yes.
just wanna
Now,
make
keep
sure
it-
people
Yeah,
understand.
exactly.
1,800.
They don't, MBTA's community district they only care about the by right
Yeah,
multifamily.
right.
They don't care about anything else, that's what they're looking at.
Okay,
Well, they care about other things, but those are the,
Yeah.
that's,
yeah,
that's the big thing.
right. And so,
Um,
can I just make sure I have these numbers? So for GR5, you came up with 1345,
1363,
63,
and I came up with 543 on C1.
543.
1,906 is the total.
All right, so that surpasses what we're supposed to come up
Just,
with.
it's only by 23 units,
Right, but
it
it's
does
like-
surpass it.
Yeah, what was that number? Not 18?
1883, is that what I
1883.
wrote down?
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's just barely over, but in reality, the heart of our MBTA district should be the downtown commercial district. By not counting that one, I believe we should be okay. But the compliance model is going to kick out a lot of these parcels for a variety of reasons. Let me explain one of them.
Okay.
Earlier today, I talked to
Brian's-
Nathan Carlucci.
Brian's gonna
from-
be like, I don't wanna be here anymore.
I talked to Nate Carlucci, who's the MBTA compliance manager with the state.
Okay,
I just talked to him
Franklin
earlier
kid.
today. He's a good guy.
Franklin kid.
What's that?
He's a Franklin kid.
He
Grew up in Franklin.
certainly is, yes. And I just trying to repeat something I said earlier before the meeting started, is he said that basically if all the communities in the MBTA region had at least good as zoning as we did, they probably would never had a reason to do
Okay,
a Section 3A
right,
in the legislature, because we are in good shape, essentially. We're doing what we're supposed to do to create housing, and essentially I'm saying, okay, that's good, so we shouldn't be forced to do any more. But,
right, we should be penalized for being so
yeah,
good.
so,
Yeah.
so the thing is, the compliance, one thing the compliance model does that I did not know is, I know that it asks how many non-compliant parcels there are.
Okay,
And in the general residential 5, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of small lots, and our zoning requires a 10,000 square foot lot. But
Yeah.
if they already have a structure there, it's fine. We're not gonna say, oh, you can't have that building there.
right,
And if it were to burn down or whatever, they can still rebuild it like it is. And
Right,
so
yeah.
they're non-conforming, but that's okay. And a lot of things that happen lately are somebody takes this small parcel, that small parcel, puts together, and they have a project, right?
Right.
That's normal business. But those type of items, those kind of issues, really, the compliance model doesn't like.
Okay.
It doesn't take the fact that, okay, this lot here, it's only 5,000 square feet, and you're only allowing 1 unit per 2,250 for a multifamily, so you can only get 2 units there, and 2 units is not actually a multifamily development according to the law, so therefore, we're not gonna count
Count that one.
lot. So that shrinks our down quite a bit, even though
Okay.
they could combine that lot with the next one over if somebody were to do that and develop out the amount of units.
do
So
you know, like,
the
how many acres were, well, I don't know, like, how many lots were kicked out, and,
I don't know that, and I think what, MAPC will have those answers hopefully.
okay, all right, good,
I mean, I do know, I could probably dig through here and say that, close to half of the
Yeah. feels
lots
like,
are non-compliant for one reason or another.
okay,
In general residential 5, but they didn't all get kicked out. There are only the small ones that you couldn't put a so-called multifamily
multifamily
on.
on,
So it'd have to be less than, 6,750 or something, so anything smaller than that,
mhm,
and there's probably quite a few of those.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
those are the ones that they eliminated from, so no wonder my numbers don't, coincide with their compliance model spreadsheets and everything.
does that match up, does that make sense, like, the ones that they kick out versus the ones you put in?
I think that would be a lot closer, put it this way.
Okay,
Okay, but, so that's one of the things that MBT people ran by their attorney, their compliance people and all of these, and they said, this is what we're gonna go with, no matter what. Well, okay. So that means even if we do actually have enough availability within those 2 districts right now to get our 1883,
mhm,
we may not be able to just get approval by the state, even though it's like a no-brainer to me, but if you have to comply with their compliance model, it's gonna be difficult. So I have this is where I'm at right now. So if the state is not gonna say, sure, you have enough units, that makes sense what you provided, like I said, they probably won't, but if they do not do that, we'll need to think about other ways to meet the requirements of the MBTA. The downtown commercial district, by allowing the potential for the potential housing units that could be developed in that area
Mhm.
alone, will put us way over, and there's nothing to worry about. However, we do have one issue. Earlier on, when they first created these, they said any first floor, any
mixed use,
any
right?
mixed use that
Yeah.
could not be accounted, right? But now, if you have a requirement for first floor commercial, it could not be counted. Then they changed that, and they said, you can count the housing units, but you can't have any parking requirements for the non-residential component. I don't know
Okay.
why that is necessary to put that extra wording in there, but that is the way. So right now, our downtown commercial zoning district does not comply with their requirements, so we can't use their numbers.
So for the,
So- So
non-residential units,
it's
is that what
not,
you said?
yeah, any commercial parking spaces cannot be, that stops that zoning district from being able to use for.
So like we have like a half a, is it
Acre
like,
per 500 square feet
it's
of
like
commercial.
one, is it one right now for every 500 square feet?
I think so.
Commercial, something
Yeah,
like that?
it's 1 to 5 or 4, I'm not sure, but it's roughly in that area,
Yeah, and then there's
Yeah.
like the residential's 1.5, I
Correct.
think, right?
yeah.
Okay,
So anyway, so if we are required to add in more units, whether we include this downtown commercial district into the MBTA district, or we can meet their needs in other ways. And so
Mhm.
there's 2 different ways to do it. One is to actually eliminate the parking on commercial commercial uses in the downtown. That
Right.
would, then we're done and we could just start formalizing this thing and getting done, confirmed.
okay,
Or we could increase the size of other districts, like the general residential 5 or the
GR5?
C1. So we'd allow more units in those 2 districts. So what I'm hoping you'll do is that a month from now, or whenever your next meeting is, the MAPC will have their next assessment done. They'll give us new numbers.
okay.
I will run it by the state and see if they agree with their numbers, and if they don't, then why. And I will try to convince them that our current zoning actually meets their needs already, but if that doesn't work, then I will come in the next meeting,
Mhm.
as long as it's not for a few weeks. The next meeting, and I will present to you what I would recommend for any changes that would be necessary at that time. So,
How
having
much,
said that, I'm happy to hear what you would recommend at the same time, and if you have any questions.
I was
by all
just
means.
wondering how much bigger would the GR5 have to be? Do you think? I mean, you might not even know these answers yet because.
No, I really
they haven't-
don't, but I mean, it depends
Yeah.
on what the compliance model says, you know?
Okay.
I mean, like I said, my numbers say we don't have to have it bigger.
Right, yeah,
So, but if it had to be another 10 acres or something, right?
Okay.
You know, that would get us a certain amount of housing units that would be allowed by right.
and for downtown commercial, all we have to do is remove the commercial requirements for parking. Okay, I mean, we have the big lot now and everything's opened up, so it seems like, to me, like that might be a smart thing to do. But I will let everybody else have a chance to ask Brian questions. Kobe?
Yeah, thank you. Lots of thoughts. That was really helpful. I heard a few different things. One is, and it's tempting to frame this as meeting the state law. I'm going to use that framing, but make it very, very clear that these are positives for Franklin, allowing units of these types are often people's favorite parcels already. They're the types of units that make it feel like a complete neighborhood, bring residents close to the businesses, lower traffic per unit, bring in new revenue for the town on existing infrastructure. There's so many reasons why these are positive things that we should be considering no matter what the state tells us to do. We just happen to have some rules that we need to follow. Okay, I heard a few things. One is number of non-compliant parcels within GR5 because of what we allow for multifamily. We have a minimum lot size for multifamily. Is it minimum lot size or ratio of?
No. A lot can be non-compliant for applying for a lot of reasons, but
The main one that you
the
said.
state is specifically looking at the size of the lot
Yeah.
and what we allow on that size lot for housing.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if it's only a 3,000 square
Right.
foot lot and they get one housing unit, they can't get any more, that's common sense, right? You can't have multifamily housing there. So that small lot would get thrown out,
Yeah.
okay? But of course, people aren't gonna come forward and try to do that, so if they're gonna do that, they probably are gonna combine their lot with somebody else's lot and come in with something that works. It becomes a compliant lot if two lots are more than 10,000 square feet, for instance. And then they can go for a multifamily application process through the planning board. So it is the size, so.
So that's units per
it's-
acre.
It's based on, well, it's based
Size of the
on
lot.
unit, square feet, 2,250 per unit, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the number. Compare that to the size of a lot. If they can't put 3 on it, 3, which would be, what, 6750 or whatever it is there. If they can't put 3 families on that lot, it says it's non-compliant, throws it out and doesn't account it. But in reality, it can be combined with the next door neighbor's property, like it's happening all over town. People combining properties all the time and redeveloping. So my thought is, when the law was written, I'm gonna read this just for 1 second. It basically is saying that it has to have a minimum gross density of
Yeah.
15 units per acre. Okay?
Yeah.
Right, so take any acre, it's gotta be 15 units of housing. They're going and they're putting in their compliance model that if it's a certain size lot, it doesn't count, and all these,
Yeah.
Right.
they're just, but reality
Right.
is, it's just making things more and more complicated.
I hear that, but I would defend the state here, right? And there are small lots. We like small lot sizes. The combination of lots requires those with larger financing and often an outside developer, as opposed to the transition of some, well, you know, the ones that you're talking about that are non-compliant are things that like were originally built as like, you know, sort of downtown Victorian mansions, and they've been since converted into like 8-family homes or 6-family.
Or 2 or 3, yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Sure.
And those are the, I mean, we love those parcels, and, you know, because they're easy to do, they help the homeowner, they look beautiful, they don't involve like knocking it down and making some new building, they're just using the existing old homes and converting them. And so, you know, our ability to zone to allow those things to happen, when I hear that, you know, we have so many parcels that are non-compliant, often those are many people's favorite parcels, and so I'd rather create zoning that just allows them to be compliant than you know, build a system where everything needs to be knocked down and build large separate apartment complexes. So that was sort of my first reaction. Again, trying to like separate that from zoning. The other is around parking minimums. This is a conversation we've had over and over. I think parking minimums are a failed experiment as a whole. They were very often based on completely arbitrary numbers. They forced people to put into parking, which has slowed down our development most dramatically. I think it's the number one reason why our downtown parcels, many ones that are eyesores currently, aren't being redeveloped, is because we have overly aggressive parking minimums. Let developers put the parking in that they think is necessary. We should have no business forcing developers to put in parking spaces that they don't want to. We can manage parking. If they think that they can get demand for their place, homes or commercial, through people walking, through people using transit, hallelujah. That's fantastic for us. That means fewer cars clogging up our streets and more people on our streets and more revenue for the town per acre. So highly in favor of eliminating parking minimums townwide, particularly in our downtown and particularly commercial spaces in our downtown. That's an easy, no-brainer policy that should have been passed decades ago. So, you know, and if you think that that is enough to meet our MBTA zoning, then let's just do it. Expanding C1 GR5 at the same time, I'd be interested in where you think we can. I'm not automatically opposed to that. I think that we got into a snag around single-family residential 4, and people couldn't wrap their heads, or because it's called single-family residential, then when we talked about allowing 3 families there, which many are there already, and they're the exact kind of place. They're like right on top of our downtown. Many have 2, 3 plus, but we weren't allowed to get to 3 family by right. I think it would be a great time to revisit that. And if it's not revisiting it in single family residential 4, then carving, expanding GR5 to eat up some of those single family residential 4 within area of our downtown. Seems like a positive. Yeah, I'm not interested in haggling with the state to get as few parcels by right, as if that this is some negative for us. I want the best for Franklin, and the best for Franklin is more value. It's smaller housing units within our downtown, within walking distance from our businesses and transit. I want it to be a absolute no-brainer, not a haggling to the minimum. Yeah, I have more thoughts, but that's my general.
Thank you, Kobe.
Yeah, thanks.
Brian?
Hi, Madam Chair.
Hi, how are you today?
Good, thank you. Councilor Frangillo, thank you. My Google Translate helped me a lot. Understanding. I appreciated that. As a dinosaur, it helped me.
Oh, come on.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Brian. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
I need to talk about the parking for a second, because obviously I have a couple different ideas than Councilor Frangillo on that. So under this MBTA compliance stuff, these let's use the apartment building across from the Getty station, how there's a, retail underneath.
Yeah.
So if that was built today, that would need no parking for that business under there, under the
That would-
compliance?
If we change the requirements, the zoning to what MBTA is suggesting on mixed use, the first floor commercial you'd not be able to require any parking spaces for that first floor commercial. Only the residential units that are above.
Okay, so there would be no parking for that.
So
So these,
Well, no.
there may be
What?
parking, but town is not going to be able to require it.
Right.
as
They
he
can build it
said,
if
as
they want.
Councilman
Yeah.
Joe said, maybe the business owner would want to have that in there. I understand that, which makes sense. But they're not going to be required.
Right.
Okay. So these next couple that are being built on East Central, I don't know if I can use someone's name, but I saw Mr. Chafee in here, like his buildings.
Yeah.
So he's gonna have some retail under there.
Yeah.
So he will not have to put parking in for that.
He would not need to consider parking for those commercial spaces. He would for each of the housing units,
Residence.
but not for the commercial.
Okay, last question. So under this, does the state force us to do that, or can we still require some parking?
Well,
I
if
use the
we're go-
word
if-
force, because
The
that's what
way,
it
the way
is.
it is as of today, if we're going to include the downtown commercial zoning district
Yeah,
in this MBTA district, we would have to make that change. we would have to go into a zoning bylaw amendment that made that simple change in the zoning book, that said that in the section that it's in there, we spell it out pretty clearly that in downtown commercial and C1, there are different requirements in those areas, and that we would just eliminate that requirement for the commercial component in that district. It would say 0 instead of whatever it is now.
Right. So if it's a hairdresser with 5 hairdressers and 5 clients at a time, there would just be no parking.
There would be no requirement in the zoning bylaw that states that a developer has to have those units. If it's an existing business right now and they're doing fine and they're not going to redevelop the site, then they're okay. If they redevelop the site and there are no commercial parking requirements, then they don't have to put those parking spaces in there for the commercial component. If they have residential on the same lot, a mixed-use development, the residential units would require 1.5 spaces per housing unit, as it is today. So that wouldn't change. It would just be that the commercial development.
Right, but at these apartment buildings, if we had commercial there, which is good for downtown,
Right.
the residents there do not want any of those people parking in their spots, I'm sure.
When you get to that point, it is a property owner and, issue.
Yeah.
It's not, and some people think that the town does not have the right to, tell them to do anything, and that's fine. There are, one thing I just wanted to mention a minute ago, was mentioned that this should have been passed decades ago, and things of that. The thing is, about 2.5 decades ago, it was passed, where the downtown area, the C1 district, which was in the downtown area at the time, did not require any parking spaces at all for any development. No, not for residential and not for commercial. When we came in and we rezoned the area, we created the downtown commercial zoning district, we changed some requirements and added in some parking requirements. One of the reasons is because when it was in the C1 and there were no requirements at all, they had a couple of developments were built, one on Summer Street, one on East Central, and beautiful development, but the residential component and the commercial component are using the same parking spaces, and they were constantly fighting over it, and they still are. Years later, a person that has a condo over on Summer Street will call us up at planning, why did you allow this to happen? I didn't allow anything to happen. It was what was in the zoning bylaw at the time. So that's why when I usually recommend incremental changes instead of all or nothing situations, because if we say there's no need for parking requirements in the downtown or townwide or any of those other things, it might come back to bite you, and I think you need to do it incrementally. But it's the town council that gets to make decisions on these things. So
That was an excellent example. It's 9 Summer Street you're speaking of.
I believe you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so all the doctors, everybody that went in there already has failed because they're fighting. So now they don't even have a fighting chance to stay in there because there'll be no parking. They had a shot at parking and they still failed. And now there'll be no parking.
Well, they're not gonna
Well-
take the parking away.
No.
No, I'm talking about
If
I'm
it-
talking about
if-
these new apartment buildings with the commercial
Well,
underneath.
I think one of the things you have to remember is that we're trying to make sure that the developer, whoever develops it, like Brad, like Mr. Chafee
Yeah.
they were talking about, right? He puts in more than the requirements for parking, because that's what he wants to do. Right? So that's what we're saying, like, why not give them the chance to decide what fits the building that they want to build?
Understood. But as he
Okay.
said, it's already, we can already see the fight between the business and the residents already. Because there's not any dedicated retail parking.
in that area.
Right.
But now the town has opened up the other parking, right? And so we have a lot of parking downtown available. That's just another thing.
Right.
to think
But,
about.
again, I'm not belating this issue, but to use 9 Summer Street, there's no parking right, there's no town lot walkable to that,
For hours.
unless you,
Well, Summer
if you have a
Street
doctor's
isn't-
appointment, you're gonna park it for hours to go all the way to 9 Summer Street? Okay, I don't think there's that many,
Probably
yes,
not.
you would,
I was gonna say I would.
you would, right. I-
Or the on-street.
Are they on street? Right.
Well, there's no on street right there, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, on East Central, right there, in front of that building.
There's East Central, but there's also across, in front of
No, that's on
Simon's
Summer
that
Street.
has, there's parking there too.
Okay, I'm just bringing up issues, like, we're not gonna have a choice, if we accept that, that's the way it is. The state
Well,
is.
no, I mean, we.
But I want you to see why this is good for us.
I know, that's why you have me here to bring up the other side.
I think we have a choice. I think Brian said
Yeah,
that
we do
there's
have a choice,
multiple
yeah.
things that we can try.
Yeah,
So, I mean, so we do it and we do an incremental change here, we add a little bit to there. Like we can do other things because basically, we're doing really well. We're really close and we're way ahead of a lot of people, right?
right,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just bring up the point of, that I've seen the 30 years of failure with no parking at all, because that's the way it used to be. And I don't think the downtown's thriving, but maybe it is.
I think, yeah, I think, again, a great example is the Depot Street, where, a major renovation to that would trigger a whole bunch, it would trigger our zoning.
100%
And
agreed.
the biggest difficulty there would be providing enough parking spaces for the space. Now, that's right on top of our transit, it's right on top of all our businesses. It's the exact sort of parcel that we do want redeveloped, and we're freezing it in amber because we have onerous requirements, right? I think that's a type of place that might be able to offer fewer than 1.5 spaces per residential and fewer than 1 space per 500 square feet of commercial. It's right on top of all our parking lots and our downtown
And
parking.
Madam Chair, I agree with him on that, because we have the lot right there. That is
Yeah.
walkable.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
walkable.
So it's like this little zone, right? We're
Yep.
thinking about.
DCD is pretty small, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Downtown commercial is pretty small.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
That was fun.
It was.
Are you finished? Is that?
I'm all set.
Thank you for your comments. I mean, that's why we're here, right?
Right.
Patrick, anything to add? Kobe, anything else to add?
I guess I was confused on where it is from here. MAPC's running new numbers
Yeah.
from what change?
I had a talk with them today, and I told them what I found. They were gonna go back through it and make sure that there's nothing in the compliance model that's stopping them. If there's any changes they can make, because there are a lot of things you can, make it, change an assumption, do whatever the case may be. Some things are in stone and you can't change it, but other things, for instance, when we changed the allowed, or the maximum amount allowed of impervious surface, they were able to change something in their formulas to get more housing units out of general residential 5, for instance. I don't know what the changes are because I'm not the one in the middle of it. They're the ones doing that, working that model for the town. But, and when we, obviously if you change from 1 unit per 3,000 and down to 1 unit per 2,500 or whatever, and those kind of things are things that they can change. I was a little frustrated today because they were using what I knew was an old number, and I just wanted to make sure. So I go back and change things and see where you are. But I don't think they're gonna come up with what I came up with, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna need to do something else. So when they come back, we'll get an updated letter, if you will, from MAPC stating what the compliance model is. We'll show that to the state. We'll make sure, we'll give them the actual spreadsheet. The state can actually work on it and see if there's any, then they can actually come up with the changes. And then I'll come back to you and say where we are with what we have existing zoning, and if we need to make changes at that time. So, I know you were mentioning, lot size and required parking and all these other things. It'd be great to change all these things in addition, and obviously you can do that. But my thought is that we're going through the master plan process right now. If you want to change the lot sizes in general residential 5, now's the time to talk about it and get it out there. Not that you want to say, we definitely want to do that, but one of the proposed projects may be to assess the lot size in general residential 5. That way, when the master plan's done, that's an action. You assess it and you look at it, and if a change is made at that time, that's the appropriate way to do things, in my opinion. Most of the zoning changes don't go nice and neat that way. They end up like right now, some new requirement, or somebody comes in and wants a zoning change based on something, or whatever the case may be. Or somebody identifies a problem with parking, whatever the case may be. But the ideal way to do it is to actually identify the issues that you want to see changed through a master plan process and put some proposed actions in the actual master plan. We'll have it's like a list of to-do for my department and others when it ends up that way, so.
Yeah, two thoughts. One, would you be able to share the spreadsheet with the committee when it comes back?
Yeah,
The compliance
I'll
plan.
share anything I have, but if you'd like, sure.
That would be helpful. And the other is, I hear you, and master plan's not that far away. But it seems worth noting that we continue to push things off. We had a policy, oh, well, we need to have a full conversation. Well, we need to go out and hire someone to come do it. Well, we've done some of it, but let's only do some of it and not. Well, actually, let's ignore the rest. I didn't actually like their response. Well, let's wait for what the town says or what the state says about our first changes. Well, now let's wait for the master. And it's just like it's pushing off, 2 years of, oh, that's when it's going to make sense to do it. Well, that's when it's going to make sense to do it. Meanwhile, and not to be dramatic, obviously things happen on large time scales, but we don't have the downtown that we want to have. We don't have the housing units affordable to people that we want to have. It takes a long, long time to build projects. Changing the underlying zoning incrementally, I might add. I think incremental is in my camp in terms of the small ways that we're looking to reopen back to what allowed us to thrive in the first place. That takes proactive doing, because it's going to come over the next decade or two. These projects aren't going to happen right away and just flood in. And so the delays are hurting the town. They're hurting the town's finances. They're hurting the town's affordability. They're hurting the town's downtown businesses. So I'm not psyched to keep knocking it off for whenever the next arbitrary deadline is for when it starts to make sense for us to change. I'm excited for the master plan. I'm excited for some of the proposals, but if there are things in front of us that make sense to do, I hope that we can trust ourselves to do them.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Frangillo. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments for Brian? Okay, Brian, I think there's a couple of things. I will look forward to the MAPC numbers, and maybe I like the idea that Councilor Frangillo had of coming back with us with potential areas that you might want to increase GR5 and C1.
I can talk with you about it. I think one of those situations, we're in a situation right now that you were mentioning, that, is this something that has to get done now, or should it go through the master plan process? Is
Mhm.
it something that we don't need to do? My opinion is master plan process is the way to deal with this. You take, or you take a neighborhood and say, we have a master plan recommendation to rezone that neighborhood by changing density, increasing the adjacent zoning district, whatever the case may be. I can think of 3 or 4 right now easily that I would like to. Matter of fact, the residential for the zoning district, I think should be 2 different districts. You know, I mean,
It is
they're-
pretty big, right?
I mean, it's very big, and
Yeah.
they're different. Every section is a little bit different feel to it too, right?
Right,
So those are the kind of recommendations that I think should come out of a master plan process. And we have our marching orders at that point. We have we run the public hearings, we do get the input, we send letters out to people, you know.
right.
When you get to that point, if you want to go that way now, I would recommend only doing that now if we're actually need to do it for this MBTA community.
Right, and we won't know until you hear
Right.
back from
If
MAPC.
we need to do it, I'll come in with a proposal next, like I said, if it's in a month or whenever it is, at that next meeting that you want to have this subject again.
Okay,
That's when you'll get recommendations from me. But if it's not necessary, I think we should really, maybe as Economic Development Committee members, you want to see certain things in the master plan, submit a letter to this, I know, a couple of you are on the committee anyway, but submit a letter formally that you need these changes happen, you want them considered in the master plan process.
okay.
They'll get on, if they get into it as proposed actions, then you just we can take those,
Whenever the master plan is done, essentially, you take those items first if you wanted to.
Right.
And implement. So,
All right, great.
anyway.
Well,
But I've come in, the MEPC numbers, they'll come up with a letter. What, they basically get a lot in there, but there's only about a page that actually you really need to see, but we'll give you that. I'll give you the numbers that I came up with, my spreadsheets, it's like, you know, a few pages long with, and a couple of different assumptions here and there, but they're really, it's straightforward. The size of the lot, how many, how you could add that to all of the other lots
Right.
that can be redeveloped. How many units can you get out of that? It's pretty straightforward numbers. Using, you don't even need to, in most cases. So let's just say there's our zoning a parcel in a certain zoning district, okay? And a third of the property's wet, okay? You say, oh, I can't have housing units on that. Well, our zoning does not say that. All right, you can't build in the wetland, but you can build, if it was all dry, you could build 10 housing units. A third of it being wet, you can still build the 10 housing units. It's just denser up on the buildable area than it would have been. So it doesn't, so MAPC is using a spreadsheet from the state that looks at this, oh, well, this parcel, you know, we can only do half the houses there. No, our zoning districts say you can, all the housing units, we could build if it was dry, you could build if it's not. So,
Right.
those are, you know.
I understand your frustration.
Well, it's just one of those things. I think
Yeah.
the state needed to do something, but I think that they're overreaching in many ways, and they're being told to develop guidelines and make it easy for the communities to understand this stuff, and it's not working that way.
Mhm.
It's frustrating for a lot of communities. We're in a lot better shape, like I said previously, than most communities.
Right,
We really are. But
and that's a positive thing.
Right.
And maybe we'll end there. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
I know we have a lot of work to still do, but it's good, and we're gonna get there, because that's what we want to see. Like, I agree with Kobe, like, Council Frangillo, like, we need to do this for the town. And so with that, Is everybody okay with, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. you,
Recording
Brian.
stopped.